Hello children, let us start our next topic of chapter Sexual Reproduction in Flowering Plants. Last time we discussed gametogenesis, formation of male gamete, formation of female gamete in flowering plants. Next pre-fertilization event is transfer of gamete for fertilization. So transfer of gamete, that is the pollination. Pollination is transfer of pollen grains from anther of a flower to stigma. That is pollination. So pollination is necessary just to create the offsprings. Flowering plants, they have evolved different strategies, different adaptations for the pollination. So different types of pollination depending upon the source of pollen grains. We can say it is self-pollination or autogamy. It is a pollination in which the anthers of a flower, pollen grains are transferred from anther of a flower to the stigma of the same flower. For example, wheat, rice, pea, etc. Autogamy, it is further of different types. In some plants, clistogamous flowers. That's quite important. Here, flowers never open. And there is always self-pollination because they are always closed. So these flowers, they produce assured seed sets even in the absence of pollinators. So that is a type of autogamy in the clistogamous flowers. Then in some plants, here two types of flowers are produced, chiasmogamous and clistogamous. This is a diagram given in your book, NCERT book. So this is a self-pollinating flower. Here clistogamous flowers, they are always closed. Here there occur only self-pollination. But chiasmogamous flowers, they are just like other flowers. They are open. They have exposed pollen grains and stigma and they are just similar to the flowers of other species. So within one plant, for example, in the viola, oxalis there are two types of flowers they are produced, where self-pollination can occur as well as cross-pollination can occur like the other flowers. Then another type of pollination is etonogamy. In etonogamy, it's a type of pollination where pollen grains are transferred from anther of a flower to the stigma of another flower of the same plant. So plant is same but flower is different. For example, cucurbita, it occurs only in those plants which shows monoecious condition, means flowers are unisexual but they are present on the same plant. That is a heteronogamy. So अगर हम इसको कंसीडर करते हैं तो we see that it is functionally cross-pollination, means some pollinating agent is required, but actually genetically it is similar to autogamy. In the pollen grains and stigma or the egg that belong to the same plant. The third category, that is a xenogamy or allogamy. This is what is cross-pollination. It involves transfer of pollen grain from the anther of a flower to the stigma of another flower of different plant of the same species. So this is present in many plants like papaya, maize, etc. So here you can easily see that this is the autogamy. Here within the same flower, the pollen grains are transferred to the stigma. So this is self-pollination autogamy. Then here it is heteronogamy. Here the pollens are transferred from one flower to another flower, but plant it is same. And the third one, this is the you can say cross pollination. Here the pollen grains are transferred from flower of one plant to the a flower of another plant. So this can be by different agents. So here it is shown by the insects. So they are the self and cross pollination. Now what are the devices for autogamy? ऑटोगेमी के लिए क्या होना चाहिए सेल्फ पॉलिनेशन के लिए? जैसे ये चेस्मोगैमस फ्लावर, क्लिस्टोगैमस फ्लावर वर्सेस दिस नेवर ओपन बट दीज आर एक्सपोज. पहली बात, साइमल्टेनियस मैच्योरेशन एंड ऑफ एंथर एंड पिस्टिल सो दैट pollen grains they are released at the same time when stigma is receptive. Then xenogamy, they can be unisexual dioecious plants. Pollen's release and stigma receptivity, they are not synchronized, and the position is such as that the self-pollination cannot occur, and even there can be self-incompatibility. सेल्फ इनकम्पैटिबिलिटी का क्या मीनिंग होता है कि pollen will not germinate on genetically similar individuals. This promotes outcrossing. जैसे मान लो कि ये pollen, बहुत सारे pollens इस स्टिग्मा के ऊपर आ गए, लेकिन जो सेम जेनेटिक टाइप है जैसे S1 तो ये जर्मिनेट नहीं हुआ, ये S2 ये S3 ये जर्मिनेट हो गया. सिमिलरली यहाँ पे भी अगर डिफरेंट जेनेटिकली पॉलेंस हैं, डिफरेंट फ्लावर्स के पॉलन है तो वो जर्मिनेट हो गए और सेम के नहीं जर्मिनेट हुए. सो दिस इज व्हाट इज सेल्फ इनकम्पैटिबिलिटी. सो कई बार सेल्फ इनकम्पैटिबिलिटी होती है दैट डज नॉट अलाउ द सेल्फ पॉलिनेशन. So then depending upon the agents of pollination, कि क्रॉस पॉलिनेशन में डिफरेंट एजेंट्स जो होते हैं तो उसके हिसाब से हम कह सकते हैं द पॉलिनेशन बाय विंड, पॉलिनेशन बाय वाटर, इंसेक्ट्स, animals, or broadly we can say that pollination by abiotic agents and pollination by the biotic agent. Abiotic means wind and water, and biotic, that is insects or the animals. So wind carries pollen grain, तो इसके कुछ कैरेक्टरिस्टिक फीचर्स होते हैं जो विंड पॉलिनेटेड, वाटर पॉलिनेटेड pollen grains हैं, और जो इंसेक्ट पॉलिनेटेड हैं एंड एनिमल पॉलिनेटेड हैं, they have some special features. So wind pollinated flowers, they are pollen grains, they are light in weight so that they can be easily carried by the wind, non-sticky, dry and sometimes winged, and then well exposed anthers, large feathery stigma. Agar flowers, they can be arranged as inflorescence. Then single ovule, usually it is present in the wind pollinated flowers, and such flowers, they are without any nectar and they are dull colored, they are not attractive, very attractive. Then water pollination, wind pollination, that is most common, and grasses में ये बहुत ज़्यादा होती है. वाटर पॉलिनेशन हालांकि रेयर होती है इन द फ्लावरिंग प्लांट. लोअर प्लांट्स में तो हमने देखा था एल्गी, टेरिडोफाइट्स में वाटर इज इसेंशियल फॉर फर्टिलाइजेशन, बट एंजियोस्पर्म में ये भी ज़रूरी नहीं है कि सारे वाटर प्लांट्स जो है वो वाटर पॉलिनेटेड हो. तो हाइड्रोफिली हम इसको कहते हैं, पॉलिनेशन बाय द वाटर, एंड वो जो है कुछ एग्जाम्पल जो हैं वाटर पॉलिनेशन के, जैसे वेलिसिनेरिया, हाइड्रिला प्लांट्स हैं, उनमें वाटर पॉलिनेशन होती है. और कुछ इवन की वाटर पॉलिनेटेड प्लांट भी जो होते हैं, प्लांट भी होते हैं, दे आर पॉलिनेटेड बाय द इंसेक्ट्स एटसेट्रा. सो हियर यू कैन सी वेलिसिनेरिया, पानी में जो है pollen grains release हो जाते हैं, and then by the water currents they are carried to the stigma of the flower. So these are some examples of the water pollinated plants. Then Again, these also have certain adaptation, some special features. Again, flowers, they are not of very brightly colored. They are also without fragrance, and in some cases pollen grains are long ribbon like, so they can be carried easily by the water current. Mucilage coated pollen grains, so that they are not damaged, and the pollen grains, they are released on the surface of water. Then entomophily, pollination by the insects. तो insects pollination, that is very common, different insects. और इसमें से भी जो बहुत सारे insects जो होते हैं, उनमें bees, butterflies, flies, beetle, wasp, ants, ये सारे जो है वो common है. तो ये जो जितने भी ये इंसेक्ट पॉलिनेटेड हैं, ये देखो, ये जो है, you see that they also possess certain specific characteristics. Mostly they are large, they are brightly colored, they are attractive, showy. अगर छोटे भी होते हैं flowers, then they are present in the form of inflorescence, groups में होते हैं. फ्रेग्रेंस होती है, दे प्रोड्यूस नेक्टर, क्योंकि जो इंसेक्ट्स हैं वो फ्लावर के पास आता ही अट्रैक्ट होके, उसका नेक्टर लेने आता है, तो उससे वो नेक्टर लेता है, इन रिटर्न जो है वो फ्लावर जो है वो पॉलिनेट हो जाते हैं. एक तरह से यू कैन से म्यूचुअलिज्म टाइप रिलेशनशिप है. देन स्टिकी pollen grains, they are sticky so that they stick to the body of the insects. And for the some insects, the flowers, they provide a safe space, a safe place for laying the eggs. Next हम आते हैं कि some pollen pistil interaction. Now we have done pollination and self-pollination and cross-pollination. तो एक चीज हम ये इसमें रिवाइज करना चाहेंगे कि यूजुअली सेल्फ पॉलिनेशन जब भी होती है कंटिन्यूड, देन इट लीड्स टू इनब्रीडिंग डिप्रेशन. धीरे धीरे फर्टिलिटी कम हो जाती है, प्रोडक्शन कम हो जाती है. सो टू अवॉइड दिस, the plants, they show different adaptations which promote cross pollination, and इनको हम कहते हैं आउटब्रीडिंग डिवाइसेस. जैसे हमने एक पीछे किया सेल्फ इनकम्पैटिबिलिटी, डिफरेंट पोजीशन ऑफ anthers, and the stigma is such that self pollination cannot occur. Then their time of release of pollen grains and receptivity of stigma also some do not match. So unisexual flowers, dioecious flowers, they are also the different ways by which this cross pollination is promoted. In the pollen pistil interaction, that is very important. It is an interaction between chemical components of pollen and those of the stigma. तो बहुत सारे pollen grains स्टिग्मा के ऊपर आ जाते हैं. जैसे कोई एक फ्लावर है, मान लो रोज है, तो उसके ऊपर जरूरी नहीं है कि रोज के ही pollen grain आएंगे, कोई और भी आ सकते हैं, लेकिन इन सिर्फ रोज के ही pollen grain जर्मिनेट करेंगे. तो कंपैटिबिलिटी होनी चाहिए, compatible pollen ही germinate करेंगे. So again it is stimulated by certain secretion, certain chemicals by the stigma. तो pollen tube, it comes out of the germ tube, germ pore. ये हमने उस दिन स्ट्रक्चर किया था pollen grain का. तो उसमें germ pore से pollen tube बाहर आती है. तो pollen tube grows through the tissue of the stigma and the style by secreting certain enzymes. So it enters into the embryo sac through filiform apparatus of one synergids to liberate male gametes. फिर हर pollen grain जो है, it forms two male gametes, and then we can see it from the pollen pistil interaction can be made clear from a small animation or video by flaxyguru.com.
वीडियो स्टार्ट कर रहा हूँ.
Let us conclude by Flexiguru
Through
video.
compatible pollination, the pollen grain germinates on the stigma to produce a pollen tube through one of the germ pores. The contents of the pollen grain moves through the pollen tube to reach the ovule in the ovary at its micropylar end. Pollen tube then enters one of the synergids through the filiform apparatus.
Thank you, and next time we will continue with the double fertilization.